her to, well, like you, partake in the morning of the written word, and to introduce our two writers, who also are resident artists here at the church right now. Jenny Xie, did I say your name right?
Xie, yeah.
Xie. And Mira Dougherty-Johnson. No, I nailed that. Yes, it's Welsh. So Jenny comes to us on the heels of having just published her first novel, which she will be reading from today. You will get a more intimate introduction to it. And Mira is currently at work on her third manuscript. They both were referred to us by wonderful people in the world of fiction. Susan Merrill was the nominator for Mira, and Jim Dilling was nominated for Jenny. So I'm going to leave it at that. They can speak for themselves, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. So I just want to share with you the format, which is that each writer will read their work for 20 minutes in succession, and then we will have a conversation. And at that time, because we're a small enough group, we invite your inquiry, we invite your explorations into the form. And I just want to remind you that this is a conversation. This is not a graduate seminar. It's not the place for critical feedback. It's a place for a supportive dialogue that explores the process, the creative process, and the content. And how many of you are writers coming here? Oh, that's it, 3 people, okay. Well, then explore your own curiosity wherever your interests lie. Let's keep it a supportive and mutually respectful dialogue. And with that, Mira.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for coming on a Sunday morning, and thanks to this amazing organization, Sherry and Sam and Kristen and Kai and Mallory and Jaden, Jaden, I got it right, and Shanoy and Mallory, who I just met this morning, and everybody else. I'm very grateful to be here, to have the time to share my work, and also to spend more time here writing. I'm also happy to be sharing the stage with Jenny and living quarters. We get to live together in a very cool house. And I encourage you to buy her beautiful book. It's out in paperback. I got you.
Thank you.
I'm a writer and a librarian and a teacher, and I'm obsessed with the power of narrative. In all my work, there are questions that consume me. Who gets to have a say? Whose voices are listened to and shared? And what do the stories we collect and preserve and repeat say about us? What consequences do they bear on our present and future lives? And the work I'll be sharing with you today, and that I'm hoping to complete in the next 2.5 weeks at this residency, is different than the one described in the publicity materials. But it comes out of the same inspiration, it's the same questions, and I did actually write something down, and I'm going to read it so they could write. In earlier work, I've asked the question about these stories that we collect and we preserve and we share. And I've related it to individuals, characters in my narrative, like how does one person reclaim their narrative? How do they get to rewrite their own story? And in this book, I'm applying the same question in a broader cultural context. The book is called, the working title right now is called Thanks for Driving. And it's about the fault lines that appear in a marriage between 2 teachers after a school shooting. And school shootings are uniquely American, I think. Sadly, that's getting less true, but it's uniquely American that we cling to this narrative that we can't solve this problem. And it's rooted somehow in our ideas about freedom and how we think about children and education in this country. And what I'm trying to ask in this book is, as a community, how do we cast these ideas out and start to reinvent new ideas and make a world that makes more sense? So, that explains what I'm doing, and I'll actually read. Hopefully this is less than 20 minutes, and it's the first 2 chapters. Oh, and before, I'm going to give a shout out to Wendy Moonin, whose yard sale I went to yesterday and bought this blazer. Thank you. And thanks for coming. This is the... we both went. And we got lots of treasures. But we are here to write and to read and shop a little bit. This is the opening of this book. It's called Thanks for Driving. It's the kind of heat where everything shimmers like a mirage, an oasis, like the universe crackling, a nervous glitch. Not just the rippling macadam on the street, but the stripes and stars twisting off every telephone pole, the leaves curling to show their silver underskins, the dusty geraniums straining against their cedar planters. It should be cooler inside the red brick school, the plaster walls mortared by the Works Project Administration almost 100 years ago. But the membrane is thin. No air conditioning in the wide hallways, just the mechanical buzz and churn of window units cranked high in every classroom. The last day of finals, we are lighthearted, almost free, clicking through strappy sandals on the library computer screen. Rebecca's library is newly built, its copious climate control mysteriously measured out from the basement. Our bare legs are goosebumped, we cross our arms over our chests. Rebecca kicks her clogs off to rub her feet together under her desk. She clicks a shiny nail on the display. She wants cherry red. For dates, she says, I've got to settle down, find my Rory, be like you. Summer is a time for reinvention. Lists and projects and new haircuts, dentist appointments and pap smears, all too much to schedule during the school year. I'm going for 50s bombshell, no more 90s grudge. I want to convey wife right away. Got it, no mixed messaging. I'm running out of time. When Rebecca moved to this small Long Island town to take over the renovated library 3 years ago, I was, still am, the lowliest in the 4-person English department and assigned to be her mentor. I didn't mind, though. I liked her feather earrings and her book cover t-shirts. I liked that she hadn't grown up here like I had, that she asked questions and scrawled bulleted lists on Post-its as I blathered about coddling with PTA moms and how to move horizontally on the pay scale. The sound jolts us, a daytime firework, a backfiring engine. What was that? Rebs stands to peer through the stacks. She's not supposed to, but she lets the free lunch kids eat in the library's expansive air conditioning. The kids mirror her what the heck arms, go back to their styrofoam plates. Foster's truck farting? Rebs went out with a balding math teacher exactly once and was in my classroom before the first bell rang that Monday morning. Can it get inside you? Neo-Nazi conservatism? Does it pass through bodily fluids? He has a Confederate flag on his fucking bed. Wait, on? Yes, it's a duvet, linen and shit. She was laughing, a thrilling ricochet discharged from her plummy belly, but her eyes stayed sad, lined meticulously with a cat's eye, shaded with iridescent sand. You use protection, right? Nobody uses that word anymore, man. The second shot is unmistakable. Rebecca jumps from her chair. Our principal's voice is high and tight on the speaker. He's new here and sounds like he's still auditioning, reading from a script. Lockdown, he stutters. There's static in lockdown. We're lucky the door is already closed, the shades pulled, the lights off. We were hoarding the refrigerated air, hiding from our chatty colleagues. Now we're hiding from an anonymous menace, something explosive, something that booms, blooming tight in our chests. It's something we don't expect to happen here, this sleepy fishing village on the eastern end of Long Island, this small tourist town. We have been taught that more than 99% of the time, there is only a single shooter. More than 99% of the time, the shooter is a young male. Go, Rebecca pushes me. Go right now. Her 2 hands on my back, every knob of every finger, her gentle shove. She bends low, scurries to lock the door. When I get to the kids in the back, they're already down, pressed against the bookshelves. They've pulled a table on its side and are crouching behind it. They motion for me to come. Shh, I say to them, but they have not made any noise. Phone's off, I whisper. They know. They already know. When Rebecca comes, she scooches in behind the table feet first, pushing herself on her butt. She kneels on her bare heels and stretches her arms to enclose us. Rebecca has her arms around every kid she can reach. They all curl into each other, a ball of hands and knees, curved necks. I totter above them, like I have red pumps strapped to my feet, not scuffed flip-flops. Like I am a 50s housewife, and I would like to wash my hands, dry them on my ruffled apron before I touch. Rory, the revered husband, his week-old stubble, his threadbare socks. They would hate me if they could see what I'm thinking, that I'm not concentrating solely on surviving, on keeping other people's children safe. I shake my head clear and stretch my body like an umbrella. I am a flying squirrel. I am soft and fierce and protecting my kind. It is nothing from the training videos. Strange after so much distancing, so many protocols, to be so close to one another, to sip in each other's air. Rory hasn't seen me in heels in years. To be fair, he has not worn any either. Reb sings faintly, more of a humming than a singing, or like singing when you forget the words, weirdly upbeat, jazzy, also not in any training manual. I want to shush my friend. Quiet is the focus of all our trainings. Mute these blaring, hormone adult teenagers, hide and not be found. But I cannot make my lips move, cannot loosen my throat to speak my Rory, his Ren. Reb's song vibrates through my body. Here, heart, is a different tempo. Here, brain, is something else to know. We are tender, fragile, breathing, beating. A child's hand slips into mine. Smart sparks shoot from my eyes, hot white, burning with salt. I squeeze back. How lucky we are that the shooting wasn't more serious, the reports all said. How lucky we are, people did not get hurt. All I want to do now is click Rebecca's shoe tab closed. That sandal beams like a beacon, scarlet and brazen, as we talk to the volunteer firefighters who usher the students out of the library. The administrators frown into their walkie-talkies, nod at us curtly. The danger has passed. They will give us information, let us go soon. That Rory, they pat me on the back, is a good one. Where is he? My mouth makes a funny shape. He saved us, they say. How? I still can't speak. Rory was proctoring the physics test in the gym. He wouldn't have had his go bag. He wouldn't have had his rosters, a proper place to hide. Rebecca's always quick to look up a kid's schedule and call them out of class to pick up a chip wrapper or a Red Bull can on the floor, but not today. I swipe a napkin over the tabletop while she gathers stuff from the floor. Besides the tater tot bits, there's a corduroy scrunchie, the kind with a zipper pouch with a house key and a vape cartridge inside, a beaded bracelet with a broken clasp and a perfect circle of wet. Rebecca leans in. Oof, she says, not water. Oh, those poor kids, how did we not notice someone with wet pants? Normally, bodily fluids means calling the custodians, especially with our strict unions, our post-pandemic protocols, but Rebecca has a can of foaming germicide forgotten after a stomach bug incident. I spray a small mountain over the spot and reach for my phone while it sets. Not in my pocket, not anywhere on the floor. Rory must be wondering about me. The chemical tang stings my eyes, makes my nose run. Rennie, Rebs twirls in her desk chair. Don't cry, we're all right, it's all right. Look, I'm going to buy shoes. My legs wobble over the carpet, my arms, my face in her warm hair. I'm going to buy so many goddamn shoes, Rebs laughs. Paws at my hands, it's one of my favorite sounds, Rebecca's barky laugh. The way her shoulders and belly shake. Truth, we should have whatever we want. Dare, we shouldn't have to do this. A rainbow of them, Rennie, watch. I know Reb's CDC code, but I turn my head away when it's time to type it. We read the official emails together. Only the gun is named specifically in those first reports. A Beretta Silver Pigeon. There's information about choke tubes, something about a rifled barrel. One unnamed student was shot in the upper body, now in serious condition. The shooter was apprehended thanks to the heroics of one of our colleagues. I brace my body on Rebecca's, the swivel seat a scaffold. We're silent as we read. Dried up like a riverbed, I'm not an English teacher for want of similes. Drained like a hose. The internet filter does not block my search for choke tubes, which pinch the bullets before they exit, granting farther range. A rifled barrel means there are spiral grooves cut into the inside of the casing, causing bullets to spin as they fly. Over long distances, this gyration improves precision, allows for greater aim. volunteer firefighters come back to escort us. I know them all. They span generations. My classmates' parents, a few of my former students. But the seriousness of a school shooting makes everyone act stiff. This way, ma'am, they say to me, careful now, as they hold back the caution tape. Outside, the sun blinds us. Late June and the air is a steaming broth, swollen with pollen, no wind. Rebs puts her forehead to mine. We are the same height. We are both Libras. Our favorite meal is roast chicken and red wine. Rennie, she says, and sighs. I know, I say, but I don't know. I don't know what happened or what will happen or what I want to happen. Rebecca just bought 3 pairs of sandals not on sale and paid for overnight shipping. The car she gets into is leased, a color I couldn't drive and she couldn't resist, turquoise candy. Rory is under a tree, talking on the phone, but he stands when he sees me, walks out of the shade and into the sun, so it's like he's zapping in and out of focus, or in and out of a portal you see on TV. He's still talking to his mom when he hugs me. He's sweaty, pit stains on his t-shirt, shiny nose. He chalks up the phone with one shoulder so he can put both of his hands on my face, so he can ask me with his blue, blue eyes how I am. We've been married for over 10 years. His palms burn. It shocks me how we are still the same and not the same, how our bodies respond to each other's even when our brains might not. This laying on of hands, the hard shells of his calluses, the fleshy softness at the fingertips, it's as much as I hope for right now. It was so automatic, he says, the phone sliding under his chin again. I just did it. It was like I didn't even exist. I sit in the shade near my husband, half listening. Rory's mom is retired from the school system in California and has one interrogation mode, asking question after question and then mostly forgetting the answers. We joke about this, how a phone call with her might eat up half a day and then not really matter at all, but I like his devotion to her, especially because we live 3,000 miles away. How patient he is, taking one query at a time. If he does not let her get all her questions out, the conversation will never end. If he balks or makes an excuse, there will be another phone call right away, another after that. Like a boil that needs lancing, every bit of it must come out. Rory's voice comes in and out. We'll see her soon, he promises. Sooner than that, he's fine, shaken but fine. No, we never thought something like this would happen here, not in this little town, surrounded by water. The farthest east you can get from New York City, parades and painted fences, a quiet, loyal community. Supposedly safe. It can too happen in California. Rory sounds petulant, bratty if you don't know him. It's happened in that glorious state of yours, Ma. It has too. He's not allowed to name anyone, but he slips at some point, so it's clear it's a girl who got shot, and no surprise, a boy who did the shooting. Rory's never been good at pronouns. He pauses and stumbles, and then usually says the wrong one. I took it to it easily, so did Rebs. It's why we are advisors to the Gay-Straight Alliance. Our theys and thems trip off our tongues. I worry about representation sometimes, and I tell the kids that, but there is no teacher, not one secretary or custodian or aide that is out in our small town. Mrs. C, they call me. Rebs is Ms. B. Mrs. C, they say, who else would understand us better? Ms. B, who else would make us laugh more? They're really in it for the Oreos, I buy them. Rebecca's quirky fashion sense, that, and I think they like how I appreciate the stories they tell. I do like their stories. I can tell Rory knows the girl way better than the boy, even though the science nerds aren't usually history nerds. A former student then, the shooter, a quick catalog of possibilities in my head. My list is stereotypical, hoodies and acne, stooped shoulders and greasy hair. There are 4 girls who took AP Physics this year. I imagine each with a bullet in their back, and I cross fingers it's Savannah, the lacrosse player who got shot, not Jordani, the opera-loving sylph. This is unfair. To choose between each girl's budding deltoids and trapeziuses, to imagine which one can best handle pain, whose mom will rally better, whose dad will bring the soup. The parking lot empties, and our boyish principal, eager to pitch in, hands Rory a button-down shirt from his office closet, the polybag limp in the heat. Rory's still on the phone, but he holds it with his shoulder, clamps the hanger in his teeth, buttons and nods, grunts reassuringly. I would like to smooth out his rumple, straighten his collar, ball up the thin plastic in my hot hands, but we've practiced our distance for years on school grounds. We are married teachers, role models. We can't need each other in public places. We can't be weak, even after all this. My brother Rex lumbers toward me, his long arms and legs, his face behind his camera, the town's news photographer, handsome as anything, his faded t-shirt riding up, his belt buckle like a sheriff badge. Jesus, Ren, that was scary. I leap from my dappled bench. We don't hug because we are not a hugging family. He puts his hand on my arm. It's hot, but I let it stay. Floxy called, he says. You need to call her back. His face cracks into his big grin, crooked canine, early crow's feet. We can't help but laugh at our baby sister, how she is always the one who needs the most, always. I'm supposed to take pictures, he says, but I can give you a ride. Rex gestures to Rory sitting under the tree again, a line of people queued to talk to him, to take his photograph. He is Clark Kent in the fresh button-down, the mild-mannered history teacher who risked everything to save some kids. Rex tells me Rory threw desks at the shooter, picked them up with both arms like the Incredible Hulk, threw them overhead until he was close enough for a tackle. It doesn't seem like Rory, he says. If there were no witnesses, I don't think anyone would believe it. He wants to laugh again, but it's not funny to me. It is the Rory I know. It's just not the Rory, not the Ren we've had to become. My husband is still on the phone, and he holds up one finger like a magic wand. A single digit freezes the group, keeps them at bay. I want to snap that finger off. Also, I want to take it whole into my mouth, make him gasp, make him see me. Rex says, "Are you sure you're okay?" Then lopes away before I answer. He waves a call me sign, presses his camera to his face. My little brother lives in his own happy-go-lucky world, so tall he's above everything, almost 30 and no rent or anything to pay because our mother's broken heart, his lack of success after art school. There's hardly any news in this town anyway. An algae bloom that will kill off this season's scallops. The town board's resolve to limit rental properties for raucous partiers. The local deacon training to run a marathon in Chile. The paper will print whatever photographs Rex happens to go after that week, or they'll run old ones from the archives if he hasn't been inspired. He's on the rebound, I told Rebecca when she asked, going through some things. She's a lot, I counseled him, probably too much for you to handle. I'm the oldest and I have Rory hands sometimes too, shoved sweaty in my pockets. Rex thinks Rory and I drive to school together. He doesn't pay a lot of attention. But I have a whole routine in the morning which does not involve any talking or other people's timelines. I know it's terrible ecologically driving 2 cars across town, and mine's huge, an SUV, maximum 16 miles per gallon, plus heated leather seats and air conditioning pumped straight out of the Arctic. It's black, just the right amount of shiny, called a passport. I will pay off this car forever, just so I can sit in the driver's seat, point this borrowed power in any direction, maneuver this shuddering force with tiny movements of my hands and my feet, mark my target, brace for recoil, brake at will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mira. That was amazing. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much to the church for having me. It's been such a humbling and incredible experience to be able to work and experience this place. I am Jenny Xie. A bit about me. I wrote the book Holding Pattern, which came out last year and actually just came out in paperback. A little bio, I guess. I was born in Shanghai. I grew up in California. I'm now based in Brooklyn. I wrote this book nights and weekends, probably over the course of 8 years, while I was the executive director, executive editor of a magazine called Dwell. It's gone further than I have ever hoped. The year it came out, it was a 535 National Book Foundation pick. It was a New York Times Editor's Choice and a Bellatrix Book Club pick, and it sounds really weird to be saying that out loud, but I'm trying to be better about being a woman who owns her work. Thank you. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna go and, actually before I dive into it, I'll tell you a little bit about just what's going on here. So this is a book about a young woman named Kathleen. She's kind of blown up her life. She's broken up with the person that she thought she was going to marry. She's dropping out of grad school, and she's kind of moved back home to Oakland, to her mom's house, kind of tail between her legs to figure out what to do next. And she and her mom have a very fraught relationship. Her mom struggled with alcoholism and depression when she was growing up, so she had to be in the mom role. And she thinks going back now, at least she'll get some sort of comfort. But Marissa, her mom, has turned a new leaf and is marrying the Silicon Valley entrepreneur and is drinking green juice and like rock climbing. And Kathleen, the main character, is sort of like, what's going on here? Where's the woman I wanted to hold accountable? And in her summer at home, she starts professional cuddling, which is a real thing, which is when you cuddle people platonically, because there's such a dearth of platonic touch that's allowed in our society, and in the process, strikes up sort of a relationship with a client that helps her rethink intimacy and authenticity and where she wants to go. I think that's it. Okay, I'm gonna read from the beginning, so there's not much you need to know. And I'll go for about maybe 11 pages. Heartbreak was its own kind of incandescence that morning, scrubbing the world raw with its floodlight. I felt acutely out of place among Marin's pristine streets and quaint signage, its veneer of health and wealth and insult I couldn't answer. As we entered the bridal shop, my mother wrapped a hand around my biceps and squeaked her excitement, and this grated on me too. Not so many years ago, she might have clung to me like this, her breath a lank cloud of vomit and liquor. Inside the shop, a series of alcoves illuminated a froth of white dresses. The other clients were expensively dressed women, with the exception of a boy in a basketball jersey who was slumped on a bench, frowning at the handheld Nintendo between his knees. I cast a line of hope in his direction, seeking an acknowledgement of our mutual misery, but he kept his eyes trained on the game. Good morning, ladies. A bridal consultant tottered toward us, legs bound by a black pencil skirt. Welcome to Francesca's, she chirped. My mother fitted her sunglasses onto the crown of her head, removing her hand from my arm. My grief swelled again to the boundary of skin. Hi, I'm Marissa. We have 10 o'clock meeting. Her halting English, which I'd grown accustomed to, newly rankled in the marmoreal perfection of the shop. This my daughter, Kathleen. Today she fined the dress for wedding. The consultant, who introduced herself as Greta, pumped my hand. So exciting! Congratulations on the engagement, Kathleen. Actually, she's the one getting married. I'm her maid of honor, I said. Greta's smile froze. Oh, that's wonderful. Why don't you girls come back with me? As we followed, my mother whispered in Mandarin, let's have fun. Don't worry about how much it is. This excursion and the Big Sur wedding that was 3 months away was financed by her fiancé. Brian Lynn owned a software company called Wayfinder that, as far as I could understand, leveraged personal data and real-time location to herd people into buying lattes or visiting the zoo. When they had started dating a little more than 2 years ago, my mother had said, I'm going to love him, in the same tone she might have used for, I'll finally be able to redo the kitchen. Money had always been elusive for us. We were diligent with our frugality, elevating it to a kind of morality, especially after my parents' divorce. Birthday parties I attended caused agonizing negotiations over the spending limit, and inevitable shame when the kid unwrapped a mountain of presents more titillating than mine. Trips to the movies were tolerated only if we strung together 3 back-to-back screenings. I learned the strange pleasure of self-denial, of trying on a pair of jeans jeans I'd lusted after for weeks, only to slough them off and leave the would-be version of myself hanging in the dressing room. In that way, everything in my adolescence was calculated against assimilation. Every precious dollar diverted from fitting in, bringing us closer to the middle class. This is what happens when you edit the published book. You never stop editing, everything's still crossing things out. Often by a trick of sales and double coupons, the store owed her cash at the register. It seemed like a triumph, however measly, over the system. Now we entered a cavern of dresses arranged by color, the fabrics, a rustling hedge of satin and silk. I had never liked, to my mother's frustration, frilly dresses. Warmth crept up my cheeks. I felt as though I were choosing lingerie. My bridesmaid wearing pink purple, my mother told Greta. She tapped her phone, enlarged the Pinterest image. Brian must have shown her how to use the app, and held the screen aloft. I think long dress. My daughter like a size 6. 10, I admitted. So pretty, said Greta, nodding at the screen. Any preference in neckline? Not strapless, I said. At the same time, my mother said, no straps. Greta laughed, exposing a long incisor. Opinionated women. Okay, let me just grab a couple dresses that I think you'll adore, and I'll meet you in the dressing room. The private room had a trifle mirror at one end and a padded bench at the other. My mother set down her bag and began walking heel-toe toward her reflection, her body contoured by performance wear. I'd only been back in California for a week, and I was still adjusting to the new Marissa Chang. This woman was happier than the one I'd grown up with, more robust. This woman was empowered and had means, or at least she'd be marrying her means atop a seaside bluff come August. With her new fiancé, she sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge, climbed sandstone boulders, ran loops in the Oakland Hills. All things unimaginable for the Marissa I knew, who spent her spare hours cleaning the house with a bottle of wine beside her. But now, as she described her recent outings with Brian, my gaze grew slack and her face separated into two overlapping orbs. Then I studied the unfamiliar features. It wasn't that the nose had grown or the lips had migrated, it was that I was seeing her from the perspective of a stranger, as if for the first time. There were, of course, real physical changes. At 53, my mother had always been petite, but now she was trim, her hair smartly angled toward her jaw. Her recent weight loss had revealed the delicate planes of her face like petals flaking away from a shrouded bud. She had traded her mom capris and department store blouses for athletic gear. In her expanded pants, she looked sporty and self-possessed, the type of woman who might race up a switch pack with a mantra pulsing in her chest. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. I missed the old Marissa. At least she would have provided a dreary comfort. As we waited, she swept a strand of hair from her face, then flinched and swore. What's wrong, I asked. It's my bracelet, she said in Mandarin, holding out her wrist so that I could see the black band. Someone could mistake it for a watch. It had a square screen that glowed when she tapped it, revealing a countdown. It gives me a shock if my hand gets too close to my mouth during fasting hours. I still have an hour and 14 minutes until lunch. I can also deliver manual shocks if I'm about to make a bad decision. Have a cupcake, for example, she paused, or have a drink. I looked at her, aghast. I'm sorry, it shocks you? Why would you do that to yourself? To be more disciplined, she said matter-of-factly. I sized down for my wedding dress, you know. She encircled one wrist with the other hand, touching the middle finger and thumb together, and then moved to measure my forearm, too. Mom, that's awful, I shook her off. You don't need to lose any more weight, and definitely not through torture. She ignored me, fiddling with the device. She'd been chronicling her diminishing body, but she had never mentioned this. I wondered what other torments she had adopted in the manic renovation of her life. Ever since my father's infidelity barreled through our home 20 years ago, my mother had been managing grief, uncertain finances, and an internal homesickness for Shanghai. For most of my grade school and undergraduate years, she medicated with drink, the habit eroding her until she was as faceless as a river rock. Then she met Brian, the same year I met my ex, who had jolted her back into being. Something I hadn't been able to do for her, though I'd been there all along. I watched her body turning in the mirror, her reflection somehow more familiar than the flesh. Greta burst through the curtain, pink gowns draped over her arm like deflated bodies. She hooked them on the wall and said breathlessly, "Okay, ladies, here comes the fun part. I grabbed a couple in different sizes so you can get a feel." "Beautiful," my mother said in English. She plucked one dress out by its plastic covering and cocked her head at me. "You want to try it on?" It had a sweetheart neckline, which I'd opposed to avoid the burden of cleavage, but I obliged. Both women watched as I stripped. Discarding my clothes, exposing a soft belly and the hump of flesh under my bra, I found that I could transcend physical lumpiness and become spiritually lumpy. I stepped into a ring of chiffon while my mother fussed at my front, jerking the dress up, patting me down as if it would make me smaller. Her armpits smelled like spoiled milk and lemons. I regarded the black bracelet warily, bracing for a shock. "High class," she said, fingering the thin beaded band at the waist. She stepped away, freeing my view of the mirror and the trio of reflections. I remember the fragments she told me about her rationed childhood in Shanghai, when she woke hours before dawn to line up for her family's precious share of rice, pork, and eggs, the other scarcities at the end of the Cultural Revolution, including the cloth with which she'd learned to sew her own dresses, how she clutched the coupon book in her pocket to keep it safe, shivering in the half-light. Things had been more dire in the countryside, where a relative shared a single pair of trousers, wearing them in rotation whenever one of them left the house. It never seemed like the right time to ask for more details. Against these stories, my mother's reticence, my shyness, and the mundaneness of the moment always won out. Now my mother clapped her hands with delight as Greta closed my dress, cinching the breath out of me. "I don't know about this," I said. "Try put your hair down." I tugged it out of its ponytail, but retained an unflattering crease where the elastic had been. "What is this, a 6? "Yes, it is," said Greta. "Well, that's the wrong size." My mother toggled into Mandarin. "We'll do something about that before August," she said, then switched back to English. "So pretty. Look like princess." I gritted my teeth. "Why don't we try another?" The last time I'd worn something nice had been a mere month ago, though it felt like another lifetime. It had been another wedding, an intimate party in the backyard of a dive bar, which I had attended with my ex, Oren, suspecting nothing. Oren had to dump me twice. The first time he made such a kind and gentle incision that I hadn't recognized it as a severance at all. When he left our apartment to spend a week away, I took it as a chance for the two of us to regenerate, to reconnect as more lucid versions of ourselves. It was only when he returned and unfurled the air mattress that I understood with my whole body the way, as a child, I'd recognized death in the mute outline of my pet rabbit from across the room. I'd had to endure the same speech from him, delivered just as tenderly, though a bit more emphatically. "It wouldn't be fair to pretend," he said. "We'd be denying ourselves the kind of love we both deserve." But I thought what I deserved was Oren. After the breakup, I keened in my advisor's office until she granted me a leave of absence. I'd been struggling in my classes anyway. Oren was 5 years into the cognitive psychology PhD program and was relocating to Gainesville for an internship at his top choice university. Me, on the other hand, I was back home with a useless master's degree, preparing for my mother's matrimony instead of mine. As Greta leaned into me, disentangling my bra from the hanger, I saw where the dark foundation ended on her jawline. She looked at me and her eyes snagged. This dress had a lace yoke that cut into my armpits. My mother hummed a note of distaste. "I don't think this is the one either," said Greta. "I'll head back and grab some final selections." As soon as Greta left the room, Marissa shifted her civic smile, the one she used with waiters and bank tellers and lost tourists, onto me. Then it faded into a slack line of disappointment. "You're making her uncomfortable," she said in Mandarin. "What do you mean?" "You're standing like a student, stone-faced at this, stone-faced at that. These are designer pieces, Kathleen." I hadn't told her about Oren. Telling my mother would make it real, a fact outside of myself. Instead, I leaned into my irritation. I'd feel a lot better if he didn't make me squeeze into things that clearly don't fit. "They will fit," she insisted. "You don't plan on staying this big, do you?" I saw it then, her old face, her eyes filled with Arctic dark. We were picking up an old conversation. Part of me felt relieved that the woman I wanted to hold accountable, that I wanted to accuse, was still there. Of course not, I said. I was thinking of getting a cattle prod. You know, the new diet trend. Say what you want about it, but it wouldn't hurt to put a little bit more effort into self-improvement. Your cousin Ingrid just lost 10 pounds. How is that possible? She weighed 10 pounds to begin with. And she just got into Harvard Business School. Related, I'm sure. Of course it's related. It's called discipline. You're being so superficial, Mom. You can't judge someone's work ethic by how thin they are. She tutted. Don't twist my words. I get it, okay? Ingrid is brilliant and perfect. I'm sorry I'm not Ingrid. My mother was good at this, forcing me into desperate, exaggerated stances I thought I'd outgrown. I'm not asking you to be perfect, and I know you're not Ingrid. She looked down at her hands and spoke into the mirror, where our faces were less searing. You're always too defensive to listen. I wouldn't worry about you if you were a boy. Money, looks, you need them to survive. I'll be fine. Come on, said my mother. We'll see. A bolt of rage shot through me. You didn't have money or looks before you met Brian, I snapped, so don't act like you knew what you were doing. At least I knew what I was missing. When I think about how hard I worked to raise you. Yes, you, Mother of the Year, you must not remember the nights that I cleaned up your piss and put you to bed. I've come as far as I have because your life was depressing, not because of any magical parenting. My words went agitatedly in and out of Mandarin, picking up shards of English. I was sick, she said, sounding stricken. Her features deflated. I tried to hold on to my anger as the seconds ticked by, but it only curdled into hot shame. Finally, she said quietly, when you have kids, be sure to have more than one, or she'll grow up too selfish to think of anyone but herself. Her attacks could be so masterful, aimed from a shocking distance, each word a precise shaft. Sometimes they made me stagger in anger. Other times, like now, they delivered me to a smothering darkness. I looked at her face, its beauty clarified by fury, and understood how much she loved me.
Thank you. Did you guys have many reactions to each other's work or questions about each other's work that you want to start with?
I'll start. I have a question about process, because I know you've been working on this book and revising it. And I was wondering if you tend to write linearly, or if you jump around in scene.
That's such a good question.
Because it's a hot scene to start with, too, so I wonder where it came in the process.
I think this book is mostly linear. I think, yeah. I'm prone to the long flashback, but I have a cattle prod back at the house to remedy that. So yeah, I think this book will unfold literally, probably, pretty much, yeah.
Me too. I wish I could jump around. I know a lot of people who are like, I'll put this scene here, and then I'll write this scene here, and then connect it. But I feel so like attached to the scene and figuring out what to do next, even if it's just like, I don't know, should the characters like sit down now? Like, should they go to the bathroom? Like, I need to really be in there continuously.
Yeah. I have a process question for you too, which is in the 8 years that you wrote your beautiful book, did you find that you had to like go back and revisit it? Like, were there great swaths of time that you lost it for a while and then you had to come back, and how did you manage that?
I'm thinking to 8 years ago. It's really wild. I mean, I started writing it when I was in grad school in 2015. So a lot of, like, you know, when they say your cells regenerate every 7 years, like, no part of me is even here anymore. Definitely periods of focus in grad school, and periods like this where I was allowed to be at a residency, which was so helpful. But also periods where it was a lot busier and it goes cold. And I think that's, I'm here working on a second manuscript, and I was telling Mira, really nice to have this time because it's, you know, when you kind of like put it away and it goes cold, it's like a lot harder to like get back into it. You kind of have to like, it's almost like a wound, you have to open it back up and like make sure all the blood is flowing and it still has some heat, otherwise it's just like very opaque and like hard to access. So yes, definitely there were times where it felt very distant and you kind of have to like claw your way back, but once you're in there, like now, even in the couple days I've been here, I can wake up and I'm immediately thinking about the characters. Like they're just so much more in my thoughts.
Yeah, I think we bonded early because we were both in the reading stage. Like you get here, you unpack, you figure out where the groceries are, and then you have to sort of reacquaint yourself with what you're doing. And I think you spent like the first day just rereading. You just read, and I did the same thing. I just read. I was like, I know that's part of writing, but it seems sort of like cheating. But that's what you have to do, right?
I heard Zadie Smith, before she wrote, would always reread the entire manuscript, but then she stopped doing that after kids.
Question of economy of time. I actually have a separate question, not about time, but for both of you. It seems, not just being a little bit acquainted with each of you, just a little, that you're drawing a bit from your own lives and your own personae in the characters and in the first person perspective. Can you speak a little bit to that decision, if you've experimented otherwise, where it will go?
I can go first.
It's even true, like I'm making an assumption because you're reading it and so I can envision the character as you, but you might not speak Chinese, that might not have anything to do with your actual life. You could have been inspired by a friend or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and definitely there are themes. Very few, I guess, of the facts are drawn from life, but I would say a lot of the themes are drawn from life. And the way I think of it as a writer is I feel like if a painter has a color palette and they have these colors to work with, as a writer, it's like my palette is like the spectrum of emotions I've experienced. And I can kind of use that to create scenarios, but it would be hard for me, for example, to write from certain perspectives. I don't understand it from an emotional standpoint, but I do know what it's like to feel culturally or generationally at odds with my mother. I do know how it feels to feel like an outsider assimilating. I know how it feels to be heartbroken. So in that sense, like thematically, I think those are all in my palette. I think the I perspective is just a way to feel closer to the page and closer to the character. Right now, the manuscript that I'm working on is more of like an omniscient third, and then it kind of drops into each family member's point of view. Part of it may just be that now I know how to do that. Or I'm tired of the I. Again, like working on this book for 8 years, by the end I was just like, I really want to break out of this, so I kind of ran the opposite direction in terms of point of view.
Yeah, I think it's sort of all about exploration and experimentation. Like this book originally was in third person, multiple points of view. The manuscript for 4 or 5 passes was lots of characters talking, all third person. And then I figured out what the story was actually about, which took that many tries. But and it was Ren's story, and it got to be, I think, the closeness on the page and what she's actually going through. And yes, I'm a lifelong librarian. I worked in public schools for over 15 years, so this is something know about and I feel like needs to be written about and talked about. So that's stolen. Everything else, I mean, that's the beauty of fiction, is like you steal lots of little things, but nothing. It's all a composite. I do tend to. I grew up out here on the east end of Long Island, and I do tend to steal the setting all the time. And again, I think it's partly because I don't know. I feel like more books should be written about this wild, wonderful, beautiful place. And it also, I think personally, it just grounds me, so I have more freedom to play with the characters and the plot, and I don't have to worry too much about where we are. I know that in my heart.
Was it, you did mention like a small town on eastern Long Island. Was that meant to be Sag Harbor?
It's a composite, but I'm mostly on the North Fork.
Me too. That's so funny. I didn't know that.
So I think it's probably over there
Mm-hmm.
more than here.
Did you ever see the Lindsay Morris photographs of the school shooting drills that were done at Greenport High School?
I feel like yes.
They were in New York Times Magazine a while ago. She lives here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kept thinking of them as you were getting into that story, and then when you retract that element of the story, it's a very interesting thing of the way you're writing from the reader, or I guess listener's perspective, as we're almost going into the visualization of a school shooting, which is very painful, like to listen to, for me anyway. I don't know how you guys feel. And then you pull away.
Yeah.
And you're back in your everyday domestic life, which is a comfortable domestic life. It's not a life of struggle. You have a nice car, you have a husband that you love, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Colson Whitehead was on the stage yesterday, and he said the thing that a lot of brilliant people say, especially about writing, but it's like if you should always go towards the thing that's like the scariest or the hardest, right? Like usually we're juggling multiple projects, or so this book also was not originally about a school shooting. This book was about a car accident and family stuff, but it became very clear that there were these threads that I was really focusing on, and which is partly this harrowing experience of working in a public school and having to do these drills all the time, and knowing that this is like really real. So I lost. What were we talking about?
Writing towards fear.
Oh yeah. Okay, so writing towards fear. Thank you. And I really didn't want to write about schools. I really did not want to write about school shootings. I was also hesitant, as Susie knows, to write about failing marriage. Those are the things that I didn't want to touch, and I'm so glad that I did, because that's really what the book is ultimately about. And I think it's much more compelling and powerful that way. So.
Wendy?
I don't know if I'm alone, but I thought Rory was going to end up dead.
Good.
And
That's a
waiting for the bad news. So I was in real suspense the whole time.
He might yet.
Yeah, I thought it was very.
Thank you.
And I have a question for you too. I think Well is a shelter magazine, isn't it? Rather good one. And you don't describe any architecture or interiors or anything. Is that because you're sick of it?
It comes later. There's actually one of her most notable clients is a professional cuddler, is a design builder. So a little bit of that does seep in.
It's funny because I would actually say that both of them, their word choice is so is so visual. Both your sentences are so visual that in a way, even though it's not space per se, there's a lot of the natural world is being described in clothing and bodies, and that you end up with that architectural sense, that spatial sense. That's interesting.
Susan? She wants more. Love to get that book published.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I loved so much about each of the passages you read. And one thing that really stood out to me that you both do so well, which I try to do and fail at, is addressing things in a way that illustrate humor and despair. And if you'd like to say more about that, I just found it really remarkable. Thank you.
So, that's a great question.
I think it's just it's a human reaction, and I think it's also like it's a protective thing for me as a writer. Like I can't go deep. I mean, it was hard enough to even write about these. I mean, as you can see, you don't even really get to see the actual gun go off in the right. So there's a sort of indirectness there, but I think I don't want to write something so serious and without any hope. So I think you have to add some humor.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just so tough to do. You can't really just push a button and you're like, okay, be funny now. But it does feel inherent, I think, to the way I think. And this is funny because I was just at the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop, and one of the faculty member, Liddy Conklin's prompts was to write something for next day's class that used humor and sadness to kind of bring the thing. And so many people struggle with it because it's, yeah, you can't really be funny on cue, but you look at writers like Lori Moore, I think is like, who always comes to mind when you think of someone who's like heartbreaking and sad. I think Melissa Broder is very funny. And it's sort of like the same way that you would sort of like regulate your sentences. Like sometimes they're like short and emphatic and it kind of conjures the sense of urgency, and sometimes they're like long and lyrical. I think in the same way I'm also looking at the emotional beats. Like something's really dark, 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 and then something has to have that breath of levity to kind of make everything hit in the same way. You kind of need that relief. But I don't know if I think about it so like systematically. I feel like if I thought about it that way, I might kill it. I don't know if that's helpful at all.
Other questions? So thank you both. That was such a treat. As writers, I'm curious if you were imagining your process of writing, not the process, but the act of writing, in a pie chart, what % would be like an unleashing and a channeling, and what % would be crafting, like building, and then if there's some other some third or fourth category of what your writing looks like. I'd love to hear about that.
You know I don't do numbers in my but I will say that the generative part at this point in my life is actually kind of like, dare I say it, easy, fun. I enjoy it. More so when I have time, when I'm not struggling against like a clock. But the real work is in the revision. Like, I mean, I'm old enough now to know that. So the like getting it all out is fun, and usually it's sort of like you think you have something, and there's like beautiful bits and everything, but it's in the feedback process and the time. It takes a lot of time. The time, it has to sit. You have to mull. You have to talk to people. I don't know where in the pie chart that is, but I would say the bulk of the book, let's say 75% of it, is in the rewriting. It's in the revision, because at some point the story starts talking to you and it tells you what it is, and it makes all these demands that you never would dream of. And it's adamant, like it's saying this has to happen, and you're like, I don't really want to do that. Really? Okay, I will. So I guess for me it's really, and maybe I know everybody's process is different, but the gushing out, I'd say 25%, and the revision with all the bits, with the reader feedback and the existential crises and all that stuff is like 75% for me.
I love that. I love that question. That's so fun. No, I never thought about it that way. I don't gush. I can't gush, and I wish I could gush so bad. I know a lot of people who do, and then revise. And this is actually something I'm working on, but I tend to write and revise at the same time. In a way, on a micro level, right? I'm not truly moving things around, although sometimes I do. It's hard to explain. Like I kind of feel like I have to like every sentence, and every sentence has to feel active for me to know where to go next. And this, other writers have like tried to give me advice. Like someone was saying to me, you need to be okay with being bored, and you need to be okay with things being messy, because you gotta just push through, was her way of seeing it. Like go produce the thing and then go back and reshape. And like I just can't do that. I don't want to feel bored, and I don't want to feel like it's messy. I want things to feel in place, because looking at something so acutely will teach me things about the character or setting that teaches me more about like, oh, this is what the character's motive is, or like, here's what the relationship is really like, or here's the thing that like I haven't even discovered yet, but that comes through like really focusing. I wish I could do it differently. So I would say 80% of the pie chart is writing / revising as I go. And 20% is just like dreaming, which is like, sometimes I'll, swim laps and think about stuff, or talking aloud in the car is helpful.
You mentioned that you were editing your published work.
Yes,
Yes.
that's why I stumbled, because I was crossing things out and like changing words, constantly editing.
So is it that do you look back on that? It's now been quite a while since you have had to actually work on that book, what, like a few years? Several years?
It's probably turned in the final manuscript at this point 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And so do you feel like you've learned things as a writer, or are there things you would change if you could go back?
I think I could work on this book for the rest of my life. If someone let me, I literally would rewrote this book maybe 5 or 6 times, just beginning to end. At one point I truly just like retyped it, even in the final manuscript stage. I don't know if you feel this way, but like you could work on one piece forever, because you're constantly growing. By the time I get to the end of the book, I'm like become a different writer again. So at one point I just have to be like, it's done.
And I think
Take it away.
staying interested, you said somebody had said to you about the boredom, and I think staying interested in your own work is one of the challenges, because a lot of people start novels, both writers and non-writers start writing, and there are far fewer books in the world than there are books that got started.
Totally.
Thank goodness, maybe.
For sure. Yeah, but part of that challenge, because is just getting it done, right?
Oh yeah, I would say 90% of writing, actually going back to the pie chart, is just don't not be writing. Just keep, just don't stop as like truly the biggest differentiator. Whatever you have to do to like keep yourself interested.
And it's nice when you do keep writing, even if it's not for huge commercial success. You learn from every book you write. You're constantly teaching yourself something. So, and I think what I do is like, when I set out on a new project, it's because I'm trying to figure out what will fix the last project. Like I'm trying to teach myself something that I didn't quite do right in the prior manuscript. So in that way, I think you can always be interested, because you're always learning something new, and hopefully you're getting better at it.
Can I ask a random question before we'll see if somebody has a last question? I have a really slightly random question. Top 3 books. Like, what are the 3 books you've read that have left the deepest impression on who you are as a person, if not a writer?
I think she was like 23 or something when it came out, which is so effed up. But that one for sure.
So I'm a librarian. I can't really pick my favorite ones, but and they change all the time. Like whatever I'm reading right now that's blowing me away is like my favorite one, but I'll give you two right now and then I'll save another one. But Jeanette Winterson's Sexing the Cherry was the book that just blew my mind when I was 14, 15, 16, whatever I was when I read that book. Just what she could do with language, the freedom she had, everything about anything she writes. I love Jeanette Winterson. And that's from a long time ago. And the book that I just read that I highly, highly recommend is by a woman named Fiona McFarlane. She's an Australian writer. She teaches at UC Berkeley right now. And this book is called The Sun Walks Down. And the plot is a boy gets lost in the outback. And it's 7 biblical days, 300 pages, 7 days. And you meet a cast of characters that just knocks your socks off. And everything is, even when you're in like the 17th character's head, you're still wondering about this boy. Like, is he gonna make it back? Or are they gonna find him? It's a beautiful book. I aspire to write a book like that one day.
Thank you. Any final questions? Yeah.
Really just a comment. I mean, first of all, you're both such incredibly accomplished and vivid writers, and so different in your approach and your process, so thank you. Jenny, I wanted to mention to you that Laura Siegel, who is now 95, writes, her craft is very much like yours. She doesn't go on to a sentence until that sentence is fine, and she's, till she's satisfied, I should say. And she is constantly rewriting her work. And because she's published over so many decades, she did have the private joy of totally tearing apart and rewriting the story and republishing it in the New Yorker, that had generated, decades had passed. And she didn't make a big deal out of it, but it made her so happy to be able to do that. So I think you could probably appreciate that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you both.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for being with us this morning. Jenny and Mira Dougherty-Johnson, and please continue to support their work, buy their books, read their books, and just keep reading. We need readers in the world, and proportionally, I think percentage-wise, most readers are women, aren't they? Well, this bears that out. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day and a good morning. Thank you so much.